Try Fragments of Silicon for all your filling the sudden gap in your schedule needs.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. Friday interview session, usually European, but I believe this hails from the West Coast. Like,
Sorry, myself.
yeah, are you on the West Coast or are you in Europe?
I am on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, California.
All right, yeah. So this week we are welcoming Madison Williams of Zweihander. Um, right. So how we like to get started is we like to get to know the person behind the game studio and whatnot, and we like to start with what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level.
Oh man, I would say the first game that really like impacted me was Diablo 2. When I was I guess like 10 or 11 or something like that. And that's when I think I really got into it, and particularly PC gaming. My older brother also was a huge StarCraft nerd, so that definitely helped. Um, and then I guess as far as gaming, or I guess game design, or game development is concerned, I did choose I guess a field, or a profession that involved programming, and obviously as related as those are, I began to start to be interested. First, it was kind of more on the board game angle, like board or card games. Um, I've invented a couple of those. Nothing that made to market, just sort of toy games. And then finally, I guess 3 years ago or so, I decided to embark on on some actual real game development. And this is just in my spare time, nights and weekends type stuff, in addition to my normal work. And yeah, one of my very good friends, Elliot, is doing all of the art for it. And yeah, it just sort of came together. He started putting out some great art for it, and we just kind of kept it going.
Mm. And like, how long ago did you start this collaboration, or rather, how long has Zweihander existed?
It would have been, I guess, November of 2017 was when it really got going. Yeah, there was some like experimental, or sort of test games, submissions to some game jams, contests, and stuff before that. But we really started in earnest on this debut game, Captain Contraband, in 2017.
I see. And is it just the two of you collaborating on Captain Contraband here, or are there others involved?
No, there's definitely others. So I'm doing all the programming. Elliot Morrow is doing all of the art. We have a fantastic composer. His name is Andy Hahn, of Soaring Soundworks. And then we have Jesse Jones doing all of the sound effect design. And we actually have a writer for all of these sort of quest text and backstory, and Kevin Yarbrough. So actually quite a few people involved these days.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Like, are you all in the same area, or is this like spread out all across the nation or the world?
Yeah, so it's sort of, we're mostly clustered around the Bay Area. I believe actually even Andy is here now. He was in Los Angeles for the majority of all of this, but he's in the Bay Area now. And then we have Jesse, who the sound effects guy. He is in Canada, so technically we're international, but mostly the U.S.
Right. Uh, Not an unsurprising development given the modern world, not just
Sure,
the
yeah.
state of the world, but we've encountered remote called virtual studios before.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely consider us a virtual studio. Yeah, but we stay in touch. We have our Discord server, and we're constantly posting images and gifs and sound clips and whatever else that we're working on, and sharing with each other,
Mhm.
and keeping everybody updated.
All right. All right. So let's focus in a bit on the game itself. For the uninitiated, what is Captain Contraband?
Man, yeah, great question. So that what Captain Contraband is has changed a bit since conception. But I can tell you today, it is a roguelike that's class based, and it takes place in the high seas basically, and you can smuggle or pirate or trade your way through the game, and encountering and completing any challenges that you might face. So
Okay.
an average playthrough is going to be something like 2 to 3 hours, depending on how quickly you die, because permadeath is a hard restart of each playthrough.
Right. And I suppose along the rogue like or rogue light lines, like is it a like or is it a light? That's like you upgrade like permanent upgrades.
Yeah, yeah. So you do upgrade your ship with a bunch of different types of upgrades. So there's sort of upgrading your ship itself, so your cargo hold, your ship's speed or agility, and then there's upgrading your class abilities. So the footage that's playing right now, this is our pirate captain named Fong. She's a sort of a fire aggressive character. So you can upgrade her abilities to do slightly different or better things, depending on kind of which way you want to go.
Right. And what are the other classes or characters, as it were? Like, who are you playing as, and what are their various strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, so I just mentioned Fong, the pirate captain. We have a second captain. His name is Taco, or I should say, their name is Taco, which is two octopuses in a trench coat, and that is a smuggler captain. So Taco's main way of playing the game is going to definitely be one that's very non-confrontational. So they'll want to get away from battle as much as possible, um, and doing that involves a lot of sort of octopus-based abilities. He sprays ink out of the back of his ship, and there's a tentacle-based stuns and all that stuff. You can, in fact, though, if you upgrade your ship in the right way, become something of a assassin type ship, because you have all these disabling abilities, and you can get these sort of bounty contracts that exist out in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you can be pretty effective smuggling and being something of a bounty hunter.
And are there any other characters to keep an eye out
There
for?
is a third character that we will be releasing with. He is unannounced, but he is our trader captain. I won't say much else about that yet, but he should be a lot of fun, and definitely kind of he's the third main shard of playstyle that we're going for, which is the three shards being piracy, smuggling, and legitimate trading. So
Right. And now, in terms of the enemy units, like, are you just fighting ships? And for that matter, where is this taking place? Is this taking place like during the golden age of piracy on our world? Is this an other world?
yeah, so I'll answer your question in order, I guess. So the first question was the enemy type. So right now, yeah, there's different types and different strengths of pirate around in the world. There are also privateers that are sort of neutral ships. But if you gain enough infamy, killing off and robbing, I guess, or pirating on the sea, the privateers will become aggressive towards you. Um, and then there are ghost pirates as well. The game's story is sort of centered around these these unholy sacraments that you're gathering throughout the game. And they're a lot like relics or whatever else you might encounter in a roguelike. They're just these there's these objects that have a powerful buff and a lot of times a pretty bad detriment. And you sort of have to build your ship that way to sort of maximize the benefit, minimize the detriment. So the skeleton pirate theme will increase as the game goes forward. The more unholy sacraments you gather, the more uh, uh, ghost pirates you'll encounter, and mini bosses and whatnot. So I guess that's the sort of a description for the enemy types.
I see. And
Um, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
you know, as far as the world you inhabit,
Right, yeah. So the world is not exactly Earth.
mhm,
That we're not it's not taking place in, like 17th century Mediterranean or something like that. Um, it's based loosely on the golden age of sail. There's definitely a lot of echoing there in terms of the firepower, the naval artillery, and really just naval battle in general is what we've tried to sort of. That's the time period we sort of modeled after. However, from like a story and sort of a setting aesthetic, this does not take place on exactly Earth. So something very akin, very similar to Earth, but not exactly Earth.
I get you. Um, Now, in terms of the ship itself, um, are there different types of ship, or is it just like the one vessel? And also, I think you alluded to a shipbuilding mechanic there.
Not quite a ship building mechanic, but a ship upgrading mechanic. Yes. And no, the ship that you're seeing in the footage that's Fang's ship. There's completely different ships for the two other captains.
I see.
And they're designed like, for example, Taco's ship has rear facing cannons instead of side facing cannons.
Yeah.
So the ship design is quite different, and will play quite differently between the captains.
Okay. And this also being a roguelike, I assume that the maps here are procedurally generated.
So right now we're working with a static map, but eventually we do want to have a procedural generation mode. But yeah, for right now, it is a static map, but the ports and the economy that is procedurally generated on the map every time.
I see. And is there a management aspect to this game?
Yeah, there is. So essentially there's kind of two main games that you're playing at the same time. So there's the smuggling and cargo and contracts game, and then there is the sort of tactile combat aspect to it. And the smuggling aspect of the game, I would say, is very managerial. But you're kind of assessing risk of different contracts, and you're also making decisions about when you make port, when you decide to take the risk to smuggle goods into port to maximize your profits, and when you don't, when you pay your duty fees, and you take that painful hit to your bottom line, and ultimately, you're trying to gather as much money as you can to upgrade your ship as well as you can in order to make it to the end of the game. And so yeah, you're not going to be able to finish the final delivery if you don't have a pretty well upgraded ship. So
Hmm.
you want to be taking risks, but you also want to be kind of conservative because you could, very easily find yourself in a situation where, you lose all the goods in your cargo hold because you smuggled when you shouldn't have smuggled,
Mhm.
or you die because you took on a fight that you shouldn't have. You should have run away from. So
Right. And I assume that the actual cargo falls into legal and, well, contraband.
so that's an interesting point. So um, that is not exactly right. So
Okay.
there are any good that is smuggled past customs is considered contraband. However, there are definitely goods that are fully illegal all the time because, like, you can't pay a duty fee on them. So that will depend on the port. So certain ports will consider certain goods to be contraband,
Hmm.
and certain ports won't. But anytime you smuggle something, it is considered contraband.
Makes sense. Like, I can follow the logic there.
Yeah,
And,
that's the same
like
in
I,
real life too, by the way. If you smuggle
yeah,
something past customs in the airport or whatever, that would be considered contraband right after you smuggle it.
right, right. And, and like real life, things like certain, like, say, opium would not be allowed anywhere.
Right? Yeah, yeah. It's generally pretty illegal everywhere. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It reminds me of, Sid Meier's Pirates. Like, I don't know. Did you ever play either version of that?
No, that one kind of predates me a little bit. I didn't have a computer that could run it when it was out.
Ah, it's like, and there's a few other games that, like the Port Royal series, but this kind of setting is surprisingly underutilized. Like, I think the biggest game that has a piratical, is like Assassin's Creed 4.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree with you. Most games that I could sort of use as a reference were tended to be sci-fi games, like Elite Dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So as well as Sunless Sea. That's another big one, which
Right.
isn't quite Age of Sail. It's something more steampunky, more sort of maybe 19th century type technology. Obviously, they have their own take on it, but yeah, nothing quite so like fully in Age of Sail and also about smuggling and piracy. So it's one of the reasons that we wanted to occupy it. But the other reason is, piracy and smuggling is cool, and it's a cool era, I guess, for naval combat as well.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the naval combat, is it all just ship to ship, or do you have to deal with like boarding and more hand to hand kind of combat?
So yeah, it is just ship to ship, so you're not going to be dealing with borders and stuff in your cabins and whatnot. However, you're not going to just be fighting against ships per se. There's going to be other creatures and whatnot in the water for you to have to defeat and contend with.
Right.
But yeah, mostly it's going to be ship naval combat, which is interesting because in order to like engage in combat with a ship, you're basically just dealing with your cannons, right? Your naval artillery, and you have to light the fuse before it actually fires. So you have to really time your shots and time your fuse lightings to actually be able to hit an enemy ship, as well as you have to pay attention to angles. So if you are being fired upon or you are firing upon another ship with your cannon, you have to pay attention to what angle your cannonball is hitting their ship's hull. So if you're hitting at a what is that, a perpendicular angle, so you're making like a right triangle with the trajectory of the cannonball and their ship. or maybe a T. That means you're hitting them broadside, and so that's a direct hit, and it does almost double the damage. However, if you're hitting them at a slightly more obtuse angle, and the cannonball, if you imagine a cannonball hitting a ship, it could glance off or bounce off of their hull. That's considered a glancing blow, and it does like half the damage. So angles are really, really important both for offense and defense in naval combat.
Oh, I got to admit that was deeper than at least what the footage we're showing here pretended. Like,
Yeah, it's tough to sort of represent it in footage, because, yeah, like this one, what you're seeing right now looks like a bit of a slog, but, Fong in particular, cares a lot less about getting hit or taking damage than a lot of other pirate captains,
ah,
because she has a sort of regenerative, capabilities, inherent in her ship, and she actually in some cases wants to take damage, because it powers up her offensive capabilities to be at low health.
And
but
then because of the scale and format of the game, you don't really do anything with like boarding actions and stuff.
No, exactly, yeah. So there's nothing, boarding. Once you defeat an enemy ship, it just becomes a shipwreck, for you to loot and, take what you can carry, I guess, from that ship.
yeah. Switching tracks a bit. In reviewing the footage, there wasn't any music attached to it, so I am wondering what sort of soundtrack is this game going to have?
Yeah, I mean, currently the music that we have released, is in the trailer, and then there's a couple videos on our YouTube channel, Zweihander Games, if you look for that on YouTube. Um, it's all, orchestral music, composed from scratch by Andy Hahn, and, it's great. It's got a lot of, sort of, sea shanty vibes, but it's not completely it doesn't have both feet in the sea shanty. We're not, handcuffed to the sea shanty. It's very sort of, dramatic and intense and quite nice. I really, really I love what we have, for our music, and I'm excited to release more and more of it.
Right. And will there be actual sea shanties in the game, or is it all just the orchestral stuff?
So I would say that our music is inspired partially by sea shanties. So there's not going to be actual 100% sea shanties in the game, but they will be in there in spirit. You'll be able to pick up on them in our music.
Oh, duly noted. Duly noted. And shifting to another possible aspect of the game, I'm not sure if this is there. I mean, we've talked a lot about the captains of the ships, but what about the crew?
Yeah,
Is anything meaningful going on with that aspect?
yeah. So I like to use a Diablo 2 analogy here, or maybe any sort of RPG analogy here. So if your sacraments and upgrades are sort of like enchantments,
Mm-hmm.
your crew is like your gear. It's like your helmet or your legs or your whatever, right? So they provide boosts, statistical boosts, to your ship's effectiveness in different areas. So I'll give you an example. We have a crew type called a diver, and they do exactly what you think they might do. They dive, and they basically increase the amount of loot that you get from shipwrecks. We also have cannoneers, which increase the effectiveness of your cannons. They either decrease the fuse time, or increase the projectile speed, or increase the damage. Right,
Mm-hmm.
and in addition to the crew providing these sort of raw stat increases, they also play a part in the different random events that happen in the world. So, sort of like if you played FT and you go to the next node or whatever, an event might appear, right? They're like, oh, there's a beacon, a distress beacon or whatever, and you board the ship and aliens kill you or whatever.
Yeah.
So similar to that, we have an event system in Captain Contraband where whenever you loot a shipwreck or go to a port, it has the possibility of triggering an event. And your options that are available to you to effectively handle the event will depend on the type of crew that you have on board. So the game is sort of rewarding you for having a diversity of crew rather than stacking like six cannoneers, which you can do to increase your cannon effectiveness if that's the only thing that you care about for this particular playthrough. You're going to be a little bit hampered in the event category because you're not going to have the diversity that you want for handling all different types of events.
Hmm. Uh, in that is interesting to know. And is the crew all like real world based, or do you get mystic? Like you can you have a ghost on your ship, basically?
Um, yeah, they're mostly real world based, but yeah, like there's the normal stuff like a first mate, which increases like your ship's effectiveness, your ship's agility, and then there's a chef, right, that makes sure that your crew don't die as much. They keeps them healthy.
But chef,
So
why do we have to put citrus in our food? Trust
yeah,
me on this one.
yeah, you gotta trust me. This is bad, bad juju. But yeah, mostly they're based in real life, but they also exist to serve a purpose to the game design. So I maintain creative freedom on the types of crew types that you can get.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I suppose that directs me to my next question, and that is, how far along is this game in terms of development, and how much more do you think you have to go?
Yeah, so in some ways we're very far through the game's development, and in some ways not as much. Um, so to give you a loose timeline, we are planning for a Q3, Q4 release of 2020. I'm hoping something in the realm of August, September, October, that sort of range. And that release date really kind of depends on how well the beta goes. I am going to be launching an alpha program in about 5 weeks to really start flushing out all the bugs for the game. Um, and getting these mechanics, basically fleshing out bugs and balance, I guess, is the purpose of the alpha. And then the beta is really like a full on bug scrub kind of thing, making sure that every because being randomly generated, you run into a lot of different edge cases. So you want to have a pretty expansive beta program for roguelikes, and that's the plan. So yeah, that's the loose timeline.
I mean, it sounds just like a solid enough plan. I mean, in its basic core,
Yeah,
obviously it depends on how things go.
yeah. We'll see. But it should be okay. I think it's an okay time.
Yeah. Um, is there going to be a period of early access?
No, so we're going to release the game. Like, there's gonna be a full release when we release. Early access is kind of a replacement for our beta program, but we're
Mm,
gonna be running our beta program through Discord. So you could think of it as like a, early access or Discord early access. But yeah, not specifically like Steam early access.
duly noted. And now, in terms of like the development platform here, is this game Windows only, or is there a Mac and Linux build as well?
So our initial release, so day one release is going to be Windows. We will be working on the Mac build in the future. So like in the months following the Windows release.
Hmm.
And there's also a mind for console. So that'll be the sort of the order, right? It'll be Windows first, then Mac, then console.
Sound sounds like a natural workflow in
Yeah,
terms.
yeah.
And I'm assuming like all the major consoles.
So it depends on the SDKs that we are able to receive from these console people. So It really just depends. You have to apply for these SDKs,
Right.
and it's a lot harder for a small indie company to get these SDKs. The Switch one, for example, is notoriously tough to get if you're not already connected to a large, industry sort of relic, like a Sony or whatever else.
Right.
Um, yeah, but there's other SDKs that are a little easier, like the Xbox and PlayStation ones. So we'll just have to see. We're gonna apply for them, and we can export to them. So that's what we're gonna do.
Right. And any consideration towards a mobile version, like for iPad or iPhone?
So possibly a iPad version, or a large screen version. But this complete iteration of the game, I would say you're gonna have a weird time trying to do it on mobile, especially the naval combat. Like,
Mm.
if we were doing a less real time and more sort of turn-based combat system, I would definitely be in favor of a more touch mobile version of the game. But it would have to be a completely different shard, a different branch of the game in order to be properly mobilized, I guess. In this current iteration, I just don't think that it would work. It wouldn't be a very satisfying experience to play. I don't think.
Uh, I can imagine. Like mobile, mobile isn't really designed for deep gameplay, let's say, or it's like
Well,
that.
it's not designed for real time gameplay. Like there are some real time games, but they're real time for a play iteration of what, like 6-7 minutes, right, max, like the length of a bus ride.
Yeah,
Um,
that is what I'm getting at.
yeah,
It's like that's just the nature of the platform, more not just in terms of how people interact with it, but the default control is the touchscreen.
yeah,
So
for sure. And I think like there's a lot of potential frustrations if you mess something up with your thumb or your fingers or whatever. In this game, you die. It's permadeath, so you lose your playthrough. I don't think that you should do roguelikes in a mobile if they are real time. Like they require, sort of twitch reflexes, I guess, maybe is a good way of putting it. Twitch tactile inputs, which this game certainly does. It's not, necessarily your counter strikes or your whatever, but you do have to respond to threats effectively, or you'll die.
right,
So yeah, it would have to be a different design of the game in order to get onto mobile, I think.
okay. And I suppose my final question at this point is: have you worked out any sort of pricing details for the game?
So we haven't finalized exactly what the price is going to be. It's going. I can tell you a range. It's going to be between $15 and $25 on Steam. But yeah, we haven't nailed down a specific price point yet. But hopefully that range is helpful.
Okay. And now I'll see if my colleagues here have any other questions for you.
I was
I think I
wondering if
covered
you,
most of mine.
But Penny, you go
I've
first.
I was wondering if you're gonna have like either like pirates from fiction in here or like close facsimiles.
So there are some licensing problems with some pirates, right? It depends on the
Mm-hmm.
pirate, right?
Yeah.
So your actual historical pirates, like Blackbeard or whatever, those are, totally, you can totally use those guys. That being said, this is not technically on Earth, so it might be something Blackbeard esque, but maybe not specifically Blackbeard. And so yeah, it really depends on the pirate. Like I don't think I could use like Sinbad or something.
Yeah.
um but I could use Captain Cook. I probably couldn't use Captain Hook, or at least like a fictionalized version owned by the Disney Corporation. um
No one
but
wants to deal
yeah.
with the mouse.
Exactly,
Well,
exactly. So yeah, it
that
just depends.
yeah, you could use Captain Hook from the
Yeah,
original book.
original Peter Pan is public domain, I think, but
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of
but
that stuff.
Disney owns a lot of representational stuff regarding it. So
Yeah, you got to be careful. You definitely got to be careful with how you're representing your characters, and making sure that you're not stepping on any toes. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And in fact, there's some fun minutia with Dracula, right? Like how people are representing Dracula, where
Mhm.
Bram Stoker's original Dracula, that's public domain, so anybody can use that to develop a board game or anything, a movie, whatever. But as soon as you step over into other people's representation or interpretation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's when you get into hot water. So certain Draculas are off limits, and certain Draculas aren't. So
Uh, Fun with copyright law.
yeah. It's definitely, and it's gray, right? Like it's up to if you get sued and what the jury thinks. So, a lot of times if you're not sure, it's better to just not go for it. And to just really, I mean, develop our own IP, right? Like develop our own pirates, our own themes. So I think that's more the direction that will go. And definitely play off of what's been used historically, but not just straight up copy or use some pirate that's been fictionalized already. But yeah, we prefer to write our own fiction, I think, on that.
Makes sense. Anyway, any other questions from you, Petty?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, Galax, you're up.
yeah, like I said, I think I what I was saying was I think I asked most of the ones I had when they
Okay,
came up.
Cool,
fair enough.
man.
All right, so I think that'll about do it. Madison, I'd like to thank you for being on the program and taking time out of your schedule for telling us about your game.
Yeah, it was great to be here. I really appreciate it. Even 8 a.m. is definitely not a time that I normally wake up, but I'm glad I did, and
Yeah,
I'm glad I was on the show and was able to talk to you about my cool game.
indeed. Indeed. So the game is Captain Contraband. Uh, it is being targeted for a quarter 3, quarter 4 release date. And where can people go to get details on the alpha and beta?
Yeah, so you can follow our Twitter account. It's twitter.com/CPT contraband.
Mhm.
You can also wishlist the game on Steam. You will get updates about the release there. And there's links to wishlisting it on our Twitter. And Yeah, watch the trailer. The trailer is on YouTube. You can just do a Captain Contraband announce trailer. Just type that into YouTube, and you'll find it. And Yeah, wishlist the game.
All right. So, yeah, be sure to do that and keep an eye out for it. All right, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to join us for our Sunday review slate. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.
Good gaming.